The traitors up with the stars. We will reel around the flag. Boys and relay once again, shouting a battle cry of freedom.
Good evening, everybody. On the 249th anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence, welcome to this 66th installment of Uncut.
We are moving to
Get there. The mouse died before we went live. It just decided it didn't want to work anymore. Just its life is just done. So I have to play with the touchpad. So the good news is I really have no slides to share this week or any big presentation. We're just winging it right here. I had a few ideas what we're going to do for this 4th of July stream. Last year we had ranked various flags from the American Revolution. Initially I had a plan that we were going to do a tier list of all of George Washington's battles, but boy, I've been busy doing research for other projects. I didn't have time to put that together. So I'm like, well, we're going to do a 4th of July stream. We had a big one last year. So what are we going to do tonight? Well, really, we're just going to talk. We're just going to riff. I think we'll mainly talk about cinematic portrayals of the American Revolution. But if we're going to talk about cinematic portrayals of the American Revolution, I must have to come face to face with that albatross over there. But we'll talk about that momentarily. Let's see who's joining us in tonight. We got Skunk's Workshop. I knew a day would come when I'd had to admit to you that I love the Patriot. Oh, not you too, Skunks. A.S. Bernard is in here tonight. Evening. Welcome to the show. Happy birthday to God's favorite nation. Just kidding, but only a little. And of course, the ghost of Howard's right arm is tuning in, giving us a happy Independence Day. Have you ever done a Founding Fathers tier list? I have not. I don't know if I'm capable of doing that. I don't know if I could. Maybe I don't know if I could do like a Founding Fathers just because it's such a vague title. But definitely maybe if we narrow it to signers of the Declaration of Independence, which I'm sure you're meaning you're probably like, well, duh, read out. Those are the Founding Fathers. Yeah, but there's other people that didn't put their signature on the dotted line. I mean, but that would be such a tall task. I mean, we got over 50 people to talk about, but it would be fun. That requires a lot of effort. And not that I don't want to give effort to something, but I already have I got 2 hands and I got them into 15 million cookie jars, according to a friend at a local historical society. They're called cookie jars. We don't call them projects. We call them cookie jars. It's supposed to make it sound better. So yeah, I put out a poll on the channel's community page. I'm just asking like what you thought was what of the cinematic portrayals I listed you thought was the best. Because of YouTube, you can't like list the 15 million that I'd want to. So I think I'd like restrict it to 5. I can actually head over there right now. I know what movie was leading to this. You're all making me sad tonight. Oh, you're hurting my heart. But I understand why. Yeah, so we had a brief poll, which was favorite American Revolution cinematic portrayal. And we had John Adams, The Crossing, The Patriot, Revolution, Turn Washington Spies. And 50% of you have currently voted for the Patriot. But you know what? There is faith in humanity because the Patriot was 50%. Nobody voted for Revolution. To be fair, it's because probably most of you don't even know what the movie The Revolution is. And that's it's probably for the best. Everybody says the Patriot is a monstrosity in depicting the American Revolution. Oh, you sweet summer child. You have not seen Revolution starring Al Pacino and Donald Sutherland. Again, rest in peace, Donald Sutherland. But yeah, that was a movie that happened. And yeah, I watched it once. It's like a loose segment of it's a loose chain of events that are supposed to be tied together. And there's like some pretty scenery that's absolutely not North America, but battle sequence nevertheless. Pretty cinematography. But yeah, it's just disconnected. Like Donald Sutherland's there for like, I think he barely has any connection to the protagonist, and he's supposed to be the antagonist. It's a mess. It basically, the movie was so bad at the box office, it forced Al Pacino to not be part of a movie production for another 4 years. And at the same time, I would argue it may have killed the American Revolution as being a set piece for a movie. The Patriot did not achieve that. Thank goodness. The Patriot, for as much as I can gripe about it did not kill the American Revolution as being a set piece. As you know, a few years later, we had John Adams in the HBO miniseries, which, you know, some of you guys voted for. I'm very proud of those that voted. The 17% that you voted that John Adams is your favorite cinematic portrayal of the American Revolution. We have stuff to talk about, because it is not just my favorite. It's the best depiction of the American Revolution thus far done in a cinematic portrayal. Again, none of them are 100% accurate. There's always going to be inaccuracies, and that just simply comes down to the timeline of things. You have to condense things together in a running time, which is why ideally, to get the best out of a historically accurate depiction of the past, the miniseries route is often the way to go. If you have the budget, the back it, and you have the care, that way you can really build up the characters, show all their complexities, and it works. I mean, everybody loves Band of Brothers. Everybody loves Band of Brothers, but nobody watched the Pacific. But everybody apparently watched Masters in the Air. But nobody remembers the Pacific. What did the Pacific do wrong to you people? What is it with Americans and World War II? And it's like, you know, they sound like Bluto and Animal House. I swear, the average American interpretation of the Second World War is Bluto and Animal House. What do we do when the Germans bomb Pearl Harbor? Wait, what? No, just let them go. Just let him go. All right, and what else did I have actually over to choice? So John Adams got 17%. The Patriot got 50%. Oh, somebody actually had seen The Crossing, 8%. Very good. You may recall I've talked about The Crossing before. Really underrated film, made for television, but a depiction of the Delaware River crossing in the Battle of Trenton. One of only George Washington's few battlefield victories. And 25% actually voted turn Washington spies. I watched the first 2 seasons of that, and then I just never really got back into it. I like the idea of making a show around the spy ring that the Continental and British forces had. I don't know. The characters just never did it for me. I don't know. Their portrayal just was really not invested in them. Like, there was that melodramatic love romance. I really didn't care about it. I mean, the most interesting character, of course, is John Graves Simcoe, who's really just Tavington 2.0. He's a caricature. Well, I want to say he's a caricature of a villain. He does have complexity, especially when we start getting into how John Graves Simcoe's recruiting for the Queen's Rangers. That was the stuff I really got into in season 2, because I'm a nerd for that. Yes, the Queen's Rangers, you know, such an underrated unit. Everybody's like, yeah, all the militiamen are with all the top-notch militiamen are with the Continental Army and the American rebels. No, you sweet summer child. No, Robert Rogers was with the British. Why does everybody have such a hero worship of Robert Rogers? I never understood that. Everybody relating to any study of the French-Indian War, the only thing they may know is Robert Rogers and his Rangers. I get what he does is important, but he's not the only man doing it. Where there is a Robert Rogers, there is also a Henry Bouquet. Always just remember that. Bouquet's far more fascinating than Rogers. Anyways, that's a whole other rant for another day. Me and my rant about the Rogers fan club, as I like to call them. And if you are a member of the fan club, hey, everybody's a fan of somebody. Sometimes what we're always fans of, we're never gonna agree on everything. Our taste in music, those don't always have to be the same. Our taste in Frontier Fighter doesn't have to be the same. What is going on in tonight's stream? Okay, Asperden has started his own tier list for founding fathers. Jefferson is S tier. Monroe and Madison is A tier. Hamilton and F. Everyone else in B and C. Yeah. You know, that's a rough outline that I may or may not be using. I have never seen any of them except the Patriot. Oh no. The ghost of Howard's right arm. No. Anthony Timmons is tuning in. Well, welcome to tonight's stream. I saw the Patriot a while back. It was okay. And of course, we have Wrangler tuning in. And I am doing pretty decently. Hope everybody else is doing well. I know earlier this week I was just, I wanted to say I was like outright sick with like some type of flu or cold. I don't know. Just earlier this week I was just worn down and just like, I need sleep. And then I'd wake up and go, yeah, it wasn't enough sleep, because there's just so much going on. In addition to, what I do at work, what we're doing here on the channel, also a lot going on behind the scenes. It's kind of like just pulling my life away. Oh, I forgot about Sons of Liberty. Yeah, what was it, like a 3-part miniseries the History Channel did when they were doing when they were doing actual like miniseries, like cinematic miniseries. Not today, these cookie cutter how blank build America. That's all they do today. That's all they do. How blank build America. They've made how the men to build America, frontiersmen build America. They've done several seasons of the food to build America. They got so many of them. Then they're on a whole Walt Disney thing, like how Walt Disney built America. Oh, I really don't want to watch that one. And it's always filmed in the same office space. Here's something about the History Channel, and I've caught on to this. It's either filmed in some office space or it's filmed at Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. How do I know this? So I was watching some documentary about, oddly enough, Wernher von Braun. It was talking about the beginning of the space race. It was von Braun versus Alexei Komarov, right? Oh, God, who's the Russian? The Russian counterpart to von Braun. It's been a while. I have a giant research project about the Soviet space program. Who knows when you guys will see the light of day of it, but it's being made. Anyways, well, I noticed something weird about the background. This arch that was in the background, this graded arch culvert, and it's massive. You can walk through it. And I'm like, I've been there. And then I realized, you're telling me they decided to film a documentary about the space race in Harper's Ferry? Like, I also like, if you watch Men Who Build America, when they do the Johnstown flood sequence. Oh, this is great. Oh, I'm going to ruin this for you if you do like this miniseries. Look how they depict Johnstown. You know what it is? It's Harper's Ferry, but they covered up the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers and just put grass over it, CGI grass. You're welcome that I've ruined that for all of you. In any case, Wrangler tunes in with a 420. Thank you for tuning in tonight and dropping off a donation. And tonight, I'm going to talk about the Patriot. But before we do that, yes, I'm not doing this without assistance. For the record, Readout Productions is a channel for education. We do not condone nor endorse the consumption of alcohol, tobacco. We do not condone the use of firearms in a negative way. Okay, anyways, as I break all those rules. Well, there's no firearms sitting around me. What we're going to have tonight is some good Fort Necessity bourbon whiskey, courtesy of Disobedient Spirits up in Homer City, Pennsylvania. They're up in Indiana County, Pennsylvania, to be technical. You know, the county, that's the childhood home of Jimmy Stewart. Small world we live in. Just picked this up last week. It's pretty good. All right. That's some good whiskey. I'm going to need it. I was going to need water. All right. The Patriot. Directed by Roland Emmerich. You know, a disaster of a man. No. I mean, he makes disaster movies. You know, that's what I mean by. And starring Mel Gibson. Comes out in 2000. And it is the telling of... What is it? It is a very, very loose account inspired by depiction of the Southern campaign of the American Revolution. Taken inspiration, very loose inspiration, from Francis Marion, who was an American militia leader that was fighting in the swamps of South Carolina, who often came in contact with the what was essentially called the British Legion, American Legion force that was commanded by the Bannister Tarleton. And these two had some interactions, not necessarily personal interactions, but you had Marion constantly trying to handicap Tarleton's expansion into the South Carolina backcountry. That's really the real world backing that the Patriot is standing on. And of course, it goes off in its whole own thing. It's a fictional account, moreover, than anything else. They don't even use the names of the characters the people that inspired the characters. Uh, Gibson's character is named Benjamin Martin, and Tarleton's character, who's played by don't say Jason, don't say Oscar Isaacs, say Jason, don't say the right Isaacs, read out, say the right. I have this thing where I will say the wrong Isaacs. Like, I keep getting confused with Oscar Isaacs from freaking, the Star Wars series, the sequels films. Okay, Jason Isaacs. Okay, I had to go back. I'm like, please, no, say his right name. Say his name. Jason Isaacs plays Tavington. We changed the names up so we could do whatever we want with these characters now. Like, hooray. All right. Timmons sets a bail. Hey, you come back for the replay. Have a great 4th of July, Timmons. Enjoy the rest of your day. ATF should be a convenience store, not a government agency. Damn right, says Wrangler. I agree with that. I'm sure I'm on their watch list somehow. So, that's the real world base of the Patriot. They've taken inspiration from Francis Marion and the Bannister Tarleton and their encounters in the South Carolina backcountry around 1780, 1781. And it's been now morphed into Benjamin Martin leading all of South Carolina's militia, and why not, probably the Continental Army as well, against this Colonel Tavington, who's committing the mother of all war crimes in the backcountry of South Carolina. Yeah, so this is a polarizing film. Those that like it typically don't know too much on the historical end of it. Those that do know those that do know a bit behind the curtain what this is inspired by, hate this film. This is considered the punching bag for all living historians, including myself from time to time. Just, oh God, the church burning scene. There's a lot else into it. It's a very pro-America movie. It's a very anti-British movie, and it views the conflict as best they can through values that the United States likes to uphold in the 21st century that may not have been applicable to the British and Americans involved during the American Revolution. That's the best way I could put the discrepancy, what causes such strife when we talk about this movie. The single biggest problem with the movie is one scene, actually, the big one, and that is the church burning sequence. I think everybody just right has common knowledge that no, the British did not burn down a whole church with an entire village inside just because they were spiteful that these guys were supporting a American militia force. That did not happen. I hope everybody's aware of that. I don't know if Roland Emmerich is. When it comes to the inspiration for that scene, he probably would have been better saying, well, I made it up because it's a fictional story and I just want you to hate Tavington. If he had said that, I think most people have been okay. Rather vote, no. People have claimed that Emmerich was inspired, or maybe not Emmerich himself, the screenwriters. Who wrote this? Did Emmerich write it? Emmerich just directed. That's what's nice having physical media on your hands. If you want to find something, you just look at the back credits. All right, starring Mel Gibson, directed by Emmerich, also starring Heath Ledger, Jason Isaacs, Chris Cooper's in this. Tom Wilkinson's in this too. Ben Franklin and John Adams plays Cornwallis in this movie. Yeah, they keep Cornwallis. Well, they don't do anything bad. It's just smeared his character. John Williams, fantastic score. Robert Rodent is who wrote this movie. Robert Rodent, which I'm gonna double check that's not like some pseudonym, right? This is some John Carpenter stuff or Stephen King stuff where we use pseudonyms. Rodent. Oh no, it's a real. Okay, Robert Rodent, real real screenwriter, nominated for the screenplay of Saving Private Ryan. What? You're telling me he wrote this? Yeah. What? How do you go from writing Saving Private Ryan to writing this, including a sequence where British officers intentionally murder an entire village of British subjects still at this point in cold blood, out of spite? What? No. My reality's being ruined tonight. No. Well, that hurts me inside knowing that now. How? Okay, so Robert Rodin, the screenwriter for Saving Private Ryan, who also wrote The Patriot, it was either him, Emmerich, or somebody in the production team that decided, hey, you know what? I heard that in the Second World War, the Waffen SS rounded up an entire French village and murdered all the women in a church, murdered all the men in surrounding buildings in the neighborhood, laid the entire village, leveled it to the ground. Over 600 people were killed. Yeah, let's use that for a sequence in an American Revolution. I'm getting ahead of myself. Harris Burnett pops in. Is there a movie that depicts the revolution more as a war between brothers? No, not to my knowledge, actually. That, in truth, I always tell people this, and people don't usually think of it this way. We think of it as the United States fight. I think a lot of people get a misimpression. It's the United States of America fighting a foreign power. Technically, as of July 4th, 1776, that was the case because we had declared our independence. But in reality, the whole thing is a civil war between British subjects. It was between the subjects, some subjects in North America, against other subjects in North America, as well as subjects back over in England. We didn't want rule over England. We didn't want the British crown that was stationed in London, England, to have authority over us. And especially to start the revolution, not every British American colonist was willing to declare full independence. They had issues with the parliament, absolutely, and the taxes, but they weren't necessarily, not everybody was willing to go the extra mile and question the authority of King George III. That was a big bridge for people to cross. And as the war progresses, you will see some people warm up more and more to the independence sympathy, the sentiments as it progresses, but not everybody does. And hundreds of thousands of people are going to be displaced when this war ends in 1783. British loyalists that do not want to be in the United States of America, they're going to be evacuated out of places like New York City. For many years, Evacuation Day was an actual holiday in New York City for that reason. So many people were dislocated. And these are people that many of them are not from England. They're not from Europe. They're not used to the traditional English or Welsh or Scots or Irish culture back over in, on the Great Britain, because they're at least a generation removed and not several generations removed from that. So it was a very awful experience. These people being displaced, they try to go to Great Britain because they want to be subject to the crown. They don't fit in. Sometimes they'll end up coming back to North America and resettling up in Canada, which for up until the 1750s, that was French Canada. And there was still heavy French Catholics, French Catholic population. That's the word I'm looking for. French Catholic population up there in the French Canada when the British took it over. And so you have all these people coming together being displaced. And I can then talk about the French Name War and how the British displaced the Acadians from French Canada. And eventually they wound the way up in Louisiana, become your Cajuns. Story for another day. So yeah, no, the American Revolution, not a lot of people, especially today, see it truly as a civil war between British subjects in North America. And that's how it started out. And boy, when we get to the Carolina backcountry, that's how it truly operated. This was a little bit different from your stories of George Washington and the Continental Army fighting it out with the British Army of General Howe and later General Clinton. This is where a lot of your militias, you're going to hear your story. I mean, everybody has what I call the myth of the Minutemen ingrained into them. And don't get me wrong, the militias in clutch situations for both sides were useful, but in the most part, they weren't as effective as people make them out to be. They definitely got the ball rolling for the revolution, but you definitely needed a much larger infrastructure, or you had to definitely have a way to wear out your opponent long enough, which again required some sort of logistics system, which United States of America, well, you can argue still doesn't have today. Well, we had a logistics system in our military. I'm not saying that, but in terms of our government, in terms of our country, right now, oh, it's horrible. So the third of the population, a lot of people use this as a talking point. To start a revolution, only a third of the population was pro-revolution. That is cited from John Adams. And Adams really wasn't basing it off of much of anything. It was just more of his gut feeling. So it's not necessarily, and that's of course where you get the 3%ers saying from nowadays, because only a third, which I know you're thinking, well, 3%, a third, those are two things. Sometimes militias can't do math. Okay, guys. But no, so yeah, the third of the population was pro-revolution. That's an Adams statement. There wasn't a lot of ground to his statement. A lot of people have since adopted it as a way to show that when the revolution starts, it was a very divisive situation. Hey, we have somebody popping in to mention about Liberty Kids. Showed family members of both sides. So Liberty Kids, I know Liberty Kids was on when I was young growing up, but I never watched it. And what's weird is it came out right when I would have had PBS on too. I don't know how I missed it. I'm honestly thinking about someday maybe doing a video. I'll go watch Liberty Kids and kind of give my, do I feel like this should be shown to children? Like, is there enough historical education in here that it's worth for kids to see? I know everybody's, even historians have said, no, it's a pretty darn good, there's a bang up good job for telling the story of the revolution, especially for a younger audience. So where was I? Oh yeah. The screenwriter of Saving Private Ryan may have, I presume, is the man that also decided to write a sequence where he's going to base a church burning off of World War II and set it in the American Revolution. That's where I left off. So that's the big thing everybody hates in this movie. If you don't like this movie, that's the scene that bugs you. And you can tell it bothers me greatly because, don't get me wrong, there were many, many atrocities committed by both sides in the American Revolution, and as in any war. There's no atrocity that comes anywhere to that scale that the real world Bannister Tarleton ever committed. I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for Tarleton on this one. For all the terrible things Tarleton does, he never went to that level of pure villainy. However, I will give you something similar, and it's not, well, let's see how you feel when I talk about it. So in late 1780, or like we're talking about like December, January 1780, actually going into January of 1781, the British really are right now, we're in the midst of the Southern campaign. The British are putting full pressure on the Southern colonies. And in addition to the stuff happening in South Carolina, the British were launching raids off of the coast of Eastern Virginia into the Virginia heartland. And one of those raids targeted Richmond, Virginia. And Thomas Jefferson, who was, I believe he was governor at that time. Was he not? Was he governor of Virginia? I believe he was governor of Virginia by the 1780s. I know he eventually comes governor. Governor of Virginia, third president of the United States, as A.S. Burnett says, based as F politics. Anyways, yeah, he was. Yeah, he was governor. Okay, yeah. So he was the governor of Virginia at this time. So he was actually down in Virginia, and he actually had to round together militia at the last minute to defend Richmond until the British raiding party arrived. Guess who commanded that British raiding party? Benedict Arnold. Oh yeah, that man, the traitor himself, is here. And Benedict Arnold was able to overwhelm the small Virginia militiamen that defended Richmond. Again, militiamen not as effective as the general public tend to think. They're routed, and he has carte blanche. He rides into Richmond. He sends a letter to Jefferson. He's going to demand Jefferson, to surrender the city over, surrender all military property. And while Jefferson, when he realized who had just taken Richmond, was furious, basically told him to go to hell. And Arnold, his ego flared up when he realized that even still, though he had switched sides, he was still not getting the respect he felt he deserved. He decides to start torching military materials in the city. He's trying to look around, find any military material, burn it. make it useless. Well, a wind caught up. The fires from the military material spread to other structures in Richmond, and soon a portion of the city was ablaze, in which would totally never happen. Richmond burning? Oh, wow, that would never happen again. And as Burnett says, you're right. It was more of a way to just get the civilians out. No, I don't disagree with that. Man, guys, the myth of the Minutemen. Myth of the Minutemen. That's all I will say. So, yeah, Richmond does burn as a result of this haphazard handling of its surrender by both by Jefferson and by Arnold. And basically, afterwards, Arnold was seen as like this, as everybody in America already hated Arnold for obvious traitorous regions, but now he had just burned down Richmond. And how is he going to account for that? So that's like something I can just mention as a real world example of where a British raiding force burned something to the ground and did some serious damage. So that's an example right there. But you're seeing my point where we're talking about the burning of Richmond, which is just something that blows out of proportion because of Mother Nature intervening, and you have Arnold and his ego flaring up, not thinking of, I wonder what happened when I light fire to military materials. I totally wouldn't set the whole freaking city on fire or anything. My God, it really is just what'll happen in 1865. Just burn the military supplies. It won't spread to the rest of the city. Wait, you're telling me that in 1865, these guys, many of these people were a couple generations removed from their ancestors going through the initial burn Richmond, didn't think burning military materials as they evacuated the city before the Union got it was going to lead to a disaster. People don't learn from history, man. People don't learn from history. So yeah, I just want to show an example of something that the British caused to burn to the ground. And as horrible as that was, it's not a church being intentionally burned with people inside. So yeah, that's the big black mark on the Patriot. What else can we talk about the issues of the Patriot? Depiction of slavery in America. We got Benjamin Martin, and he's like, oh no, they're hired labor. Yes, they're free. They're here on their own will. Yes, in South Carolina in 1780. How many slaves Francis Marion owned? Owned enough to own a plantation, but nobody's given me a count on his slaves. But he did own a plantation. Patriot slave. Francis Marion family owned slave. Oscar was a slave. They probably are about the same age, or at least the same generation. Okay, yeah, so you get my point. But we got this whole that it's not even so much it's just the depiction of slavery. You know what? Other people could do a better video on it than I could, especially when I'm drinking, whiskey, bourbon. Probably, but not a good idea for me to talk about. Probably not a good idea for me to talk about slavery while I'm drinking some disobedient spirits by Fort Necessity. That'll be bad things. But in short, everybody, including myself, can be critical of the depiction of slavery in the United States of America in the movie The Patriot. Then he sends the family out to live at a slave colony, the refugee slave colony on the coast. Not necessarily the best place to be. It's just one of them, and they're completely fine with it. They're completely fine. Oh look, we have this rich white family living amongst free runaway slaves out here on the coast. Totally, nobody's going to come looking for this wealthy white family and wondering where they went. I don't know. It's just always bothers me. I don't know. But for what he'll say, as much as tonight was like, oh, this is going to be Spence, this is going to be Reed burning the Patriots. It's going to be him roasting the Patriot. As much as I got to rant about things, I have something else I can rant that's wrong. This is a little detail, but it bugs me to death because I'm around 18th century artillery a lot. So during some of these battle sequences, they're rolling up garrison pieces, naval guns, these cast iron pieces on naval carriages. What I mean is it's this basically block of wood with small wooden wheels, which are designed to be on the decks of wooden ships or on the decks of forts. And that's so you have nice recoil because these guns are very heavy. And when they fire, every action is an equal reaction. You don't use them in the field of battle. You got field pieces for that with the large wheels. That's what those are for. I don't remember too many field pieces in this movie. I just remember seeing a lot of garrison pieces being used in the field for some odd reason. Now, granted, if you say this as well, these are American forces and they don't have much supplies and they're doing the best they can, fair. But I think the British too are using them. Yeah, I think they use them during the Battle of Camden sequence. What is up with that? And the worst part is, they actually do a really good portrayal of what a cannonball actually does. There's a whole sequence that Roland Emmerich devotes to, and credit to him. We see this cannonball, a solid iron projectile, come out several hundred miles per hour from a naval piece being used on land. And it flies toward the camera, bounces off the ground, and the next thing we see, it's taking a man's head off. No explosion, sheer brutality, however. That is how a cannonball works in combat. You'll never hardly see a cinematic portrayal of artillery from this time period do something like that. It's always a puff of smoke and flames when the cannonball hits its target. A solid piece of metal just magically combusting. So there is that. Emmerich does get that right, but he has it coming out of the wrong freaking artillery piece. Oh, why? Why can't I just have a historically accurate American Revolution movie? Why is this so hard? There's so much wealth of knowledge to make your life easy when you produce these movies. In any case, what I will say about the Patriot, and this is why, for as much as I get all frazzled out about the historical inaccuracies in it, it's shot beautifully. Great cinematography. It's a very simple story to grasp onto. Jason Isaacs as Colonel Tavington is just a great villain. For as much as I freak out at the historical inaccuracies or how this would not be accepted in this time period, or just how this could not be happening. Doesn't matter. He just has the best deliveries of lines. One of my favorite reactions is, when the rebel militia, set fire to one of Cornwallis's boats, that's going off. And you just see freaking Tavington in the background, just downing with some sort of drink, just like, oh God, this is a long night. Yeah, you see, he always has the best reactions, and I won't deny that. As much as I make fun of this movie, we all, when we go up to living history events, we quote this movie, even though we have issues with the movie. We can't help but quote it, especially Tavington, the town, burn the church. But you said you'd be forgiven. Indeed, you may. That's between you and God. He got some good one-liners in this movie. Evil one-liners, but good one-liners. Honestly, he is a cartoon. He would be better as a cartoon villain than he would be in a live-action film. And you know what? Yes, other people fought that. And when there was a duo of creators back in around 2004 that were shopping around for voice actors to portray a Admiral Zhao in an upcoming Nickelodeon animated series called Avatar: The Last Airbender, they had on the docket, they wanted somebody similar to Colonel Tavington from The Patriot. They wanted this very evil, duty-minded, this military figure who takes duty to the next level, wants personal glory, and will do anything to get it and has no problem killing people in front of him. We want a Colonel Tavington. Well, guess who showed up to audition? Jason Isaacs. And guess what? He landed the part, and he basically just kept doing Colonel Tavington, but as a voiced character in Avatar: The Last Airbender called Admiral Zhao. So, you know what? Yeah, Tavington's a great cartoon villain, and they made him an actual cartoon villain. So good on you. Honestly, I still think my favorite Jason Isaac performance is not actually Colonel Tavington, but it's actually when he plays General Zhukov in Death of Stalin. The fact that they couldn't put all of Zhukov's medals on his chest, so it's not actually fully accurate. It's just all the more hilarious because it's like, oh, nobody would believe that he had that many medals, because he did, because it's the Soviet Union. They just kept layering him up medals. The Death of Stalin's a great movie. I don't care what people say. That is a. If you want to get just a bite, just a taste of what's all that is wrong with communism, and especially the Soviet Union's use of communism, watch The Death of Stalin. And then go watch something like History Buffs dive into the history behind it. And then you'll understand how messed up communist countries really are. And you really think capitalist countries are messed up. Oh boy. So yeah, there's that. I do like the characters as much as the history side of me just freaks out. But you know what? Something I've always liked about the movie, something I will always give the Patriot credit. It does put an emphasis on the French and Indian War, which in general talk about the American Revolution is often ignored. We only hear no taxation without representation, and that's about it. And nobody asks, well, where did those taxes come from? Now, that's kind of led to this misconception that just one day the British king decided to be a complete jackass to those noble colonists, and he put all these taxes on us. Now, so not why. This flag over here, which is actually just a cartoon put on a banner, cartoon drawn by Benjamin Franklin, by the way. This is not relating to the American Revolution, though many people associate with it. This was created in 1754 to try to convince the American colonies to unite in support of the British war effort against the French in what became known as the 7 Years' War. We call it the French and Indian War around here. At that time, it was hard to get the colonists to sing the same tune. They wanted to be their own separate people and give their own separate goods to the British Empire itself. The only thing that really tied the 13 colonies was their allegiance to King George II during the French and Indian War. Later became George III thereafter. And large quantities of American colonists participate, serving arm in arm with the British regulars in this fight over control of North America, particularly the Ohio River Valley. And at the start of the war, some of these soldiers were promised land grants, particularly the Virginian Regiment commanded by Colonel George Washington. And well, when the war was over, they wanted to see that land. The British, however, were in quite a sticky situation because they had made numerous deals to kind of win this war. I mean, like any country does. They make all these deals that make decisions now, ask questions later. Hey, that sounds good. That sounds good. Just win this war. We'll sort it out later on. And then they never sort it out, which usually leads to another war. And that's exactly the case with what happens with the French and Indian War. In 1763, the British are in a predicament. They've made numerous treaties to native tribes in the Ohio River Valley to win their neutrality, to allow them to not have the British forces be attacked by native warriors back in the French. By getting this neutrality, the British were able to get one over the French and kind of overwhelm them with numerical advantage in the Ohio River Valley. And now, since they had won the war, those native tribes were expecting the British to uphold those treaties. The colonists, they wanted that land that the natives wanted protected. We have a conflict of interest here for British Parliament and the king. And before even the British can make decisions, you have a lot of these American ex-soldiers from the French and Indian War. They're already squatting on the land in the Ohio River Valley. They ain't waiting to be told so because they're like, hey, we signed the dotted line. We won the war. Give us the land. And eventually this leads to a lot of native attacks on the frontier being renewed. And the British Crown could not afford to continue a large defense of the Appalachian mountain range against these raids. So an executive decision had to be made, and King George III made it in the Proclamation of 1763, using the Appalachian mountain range as a boundary between British America and indigenous America. This essentially, for the time being, forbade settlement west of the mountains, which didn't go so well with the ex-soldiers from the American colonies. And since they were bankrupt from the French and Indian War, and they noticed that, hey, the American colonists, their taxes are far lower than the English taxes. And if they want to truly be equals to us, they should pay their taxes equally. So they raised the taxes up to be equal to that in London, England, which the colonists took as translation to, we are paying for a war we were not rewarded for. And there's where you got your root for a revolution. There's a lot more we can get into, like the Quebec Act, which essentially really upset Protestants in the American colonies, because essentially gave Catholics up in what was then French Canada, later became British Canada, gave them a lot more rights as British subjects. There's the Quartering Act, where the British, since they're bankrupt, they can't afford garrisons, they're going to force the colonists, since they're subjects, equal subjects of the crown, to allow soldiers to garrison in their own private homes. That's where you get the Third Amendment from, by the way. So there's all this layering up, but that's really the core thing that sets this whole war off. What does it have to do with the movie The Patriot? Well, I bring it up because actually Benjamin Martin's character actually has history with the French-Indian War. It's alluded to throughout the movie by the characters. And we get that great, actually brilliant sequence where Mel Gibson finally speaks to Heath Ledger about this Fort Wilderness, which, by the way, Fort Wilderness, what a lazy name. This Fort Wilderness event, which is highly fictitious, it's made up, but it does get into stuff that does happen in the American backcountry before, during, and even after the French and Indian War. Essentially recounts about a time that he was with, we presume, the Virginia Regiment, because he says Chris Cooper's character says Martin served under Washington in the French Indian War, which that I've always had my head screwed around with. I'm like, so he's a Virginian that's moved down to South Carolina? Okay. I can see it happening. Anyways, he talks to his son about being sent on a mission to go down the river to relieve this fort. They found the fort had been massacred. They go find the first native encampment, and they massacre everybody in the encampment indiscriminately and kind of macabrely stack the bodies up on a raft and let it go down the river. This isn't really there's nothing directly he's referring to, but what's interesting to me is that you get a lot of these heinous acts on the frontier that American colonists and native people both committed on each other. Skewed more toward the colonists committed on the natives. It comes to mind to an event that actually occurs during the American Revolution. I know I'm tying this to the French Indian War, but it's a rough time period. What ended up happening was in 1782, there was an event known as the Gutenhaden Massacre. Hardly anybody knows about it today. And essentially what occurred was throughout the American, you first say for the French and Indian War, then for the Revolution. So we're talking about 20 years worth of this border war between colonial America and indigenous America. And Washington County, Pennsylvania, which is on the very southwest, is basically in the southwest corner of the present day state of Pennsylvania, got a lot of the brunt of these back and forth raids on both sides. And in 1782, something snapped in the Washington County militia. They decide after an indigenous raid that they're going to go out and attack the first settlement that they find, the first native village that they can find west. And they go into present-day Ohio, and they come across this village known as Gutenhaden. It was set up by a Moravian missionary a few years earlier to convert the Delaware people to Christianity. Interestingly enough, the people of Gutenhaden had abandoned the village earlier, but the women and children seeking food decided to go back to the village for a one-day stay to retrieve anything they had not taken. And it's the same day they go there, it's the same day that the Washington County militia show up. Well, the Washington County militia round up the women and children inside the longhouse, and they kill 96 Moravian Delaware that day with a hammer. Not with firing squad, with a hammer. It was bad enough they're killing women and children. They did it with a hammer. Teddy Roosevelt would later say that it was probably one of, if not the most heinous act to ever occur in the American frontier. Story's not over. So a few months later, Washington's going to send out his close associate, Colonel William Crawford, to lead an expedition from Fort Pitt, Pennsylvania, down the Ohio River and neutralize native villages around present-day Sandusky, Ohio. Well, it doesn't go too well. It never goes well. Every time the Americans send a force out of Fort Pitt, nothing goes well. Well, in this case, they get pinned down. They get ambushed. The expedition calls off their raids. They fall back to Fort Pitt. Crawford's missing a relative of his that had been serving the battle. So he goes back to the battlefield. He gets captured by the native warriors. They believe he was the one that had perpetrated the Gutenhaden massacre, Gnadenhutten massacre. It's like a German name. I can't speak. I can barely speak English. You're trying to get me to speak French and German on his channel. It's like, oh, it's a nightmare. And what ended up happening was, they claimed Crawford was the one that committed that heinous act, and for that they burned him at the stake to death. Crawford, in terms of the Gnadenhutten massacre, was completely innocent. An innocent man had been killed for a crime he had not done. And to make matters even worse, what I've done during my research, what I think happened was the perpetrators, the leaders of the Washington County militia, sounds like they were with Crawford's expeditionary force, and basically they're the ones leaving the battlefield evacuating. So at some point, I imagine Crawford actually crossed shoulders with the people that actually perpetrated that massacre. So those people that perpetrated the massacre got away clean. Crawford was killed for their sins. This is just the reason I'm bringing this all up is because when we have this scene of him describing the attack on Fort Wilderness, though it's French and Indian War, we're going to be really excited. It shows that, hey, all this stuff happened before the revolution. This stuff happened, and it's leading to what we're seeing right now. It also does have similarities, rough similarities, makes you think of other atrocities committed by both sides before, during, and after the American Revolution. So, as much as I want to be here and just, rate this movie for the church burning scene and other stuff in it, there are some glimpses that clearly the screenwriter has knows a little bit more about the American Revolution than just simply going for Wikipedia. But why did you have a church burning sequence in it? Why? Why did you base it off of a World War II? Clearly, it's because you do World War II writing. You wrote for Saving Private Ryan. All right, let's see what's going on in here. Millions for the defense and not one penny for tribute. And Swords and Starships is tuned in. Thank you for tuning in. That is Captain Garrett, who we've had on a few months back as a guest on Uncut History. He has a 2-part book series out currently called Blood and Oak, which tells the tale of a young man whose family was captured by Barbary pirates, and it is his hell-bent mission to get out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, get himself to the Barbary coast and free his family, even though it seems like a forlorn hope to all of his friends and rivals. So I'm currently reading the first book. He has 2 books out now. Highly recommend it. And he actually dropped $4.99. Yes, the 1 cent was taken by the British Crown, I presume. I have long feared my sins would return to visit me. And that also means, yeah, it's ridiculous. But it is to me. I know it's such in the grand scheme of things, it's only a few minute sequence. It's so irredeemable for me. It really, really makes me have a problem liking this movie. Oh, and then we have the whole thing where the grand finale is a kit bash of the Battle of Cowpen / Guilford Courthouse. They don't really name the battle, but that's what it's supposed to be. To try to give you some real world context on what's going on in that battle and why they're so important. And I'm actually hoping one day we can, my hat's going killed. I'm hoping one day we can actually visit these sites. I'd love to feature them on Retracing History, but I'm here in Pennsylvania. They're all the way down South Carolina. That's a terribly long distance, as Buster Kilrain would say. So, and this actually gets into Bannister Tarleton's real world events. The plan in 1780 for the British Empire, because you have to remember the war had been going on for several years now, since 1775. George Washington and his portion of the Continental Army have pinned a British force in New York City since 1778. They've been gridlocked, other than some raids going into the New York countryside. So at this point, the war in the North is over. It's been over since 1778, and nobody is willing to blink. So the decision is made to detach Lord Cornwallis of a large British army, take them to Charleston, South Carolina, capture that city. They'll also eventually, Savannah had already been captured at this point, I believe. And from Charleston, South Carolina, Cornwallis' strategy, since he's secured this massive American city. By the way, it's the largest surrender of American troops until the American Civil War. Massive. This giant American garrison surrenders. So we always think that the battles of Saratoga are the turning point, or the Winter Valley Forge is the turning point. It wasn't over. In 1780, the American Revolution could have still very easily crumbled at this point. So Charleston is taken, and now they're going to send British military forces into the backcountry. There are three prongs to make this work. One prong, of course, one prong is going to be, of course, under Cornwallis. One's going to be under Tarleton, and one is going to be under Patrick Ferguson, famed for the Ferguson rifle, one of the earliest breech-loading rifles you'll ever see. It was actually used during the Revolution, though only 100 were made. Ferguson's mission was actually to go up into the mountains, recruit loyalist militia to his side. Cornwallis and Ferguson were both under the impression that South Carolina was a hotbed of loyalists. And while maybe some in the city, and especially at the start of the war when things were in a brutal civil war in the backcountry, a lot of guerrilla ambushes on loyalists and patriots. By 1780, a lot of the backcountry is starting to swing over toward the patriot cause. Not all. Ferguson will organize a militia, but it is really just to toll the war is really starting to push people toward independence. Just maybe they don't necessarily want independence to happen, but or they don't have their heart in independence, but they know if this war just ends, it'll make their lives easier. So if it means getting independence, we'll end it. Fine. Well, Ferguson makes some mistakes. How he recruits his men, and that he's pretty rough with his militia, pretty rough with the residents. So he kind of starts alienating people. He's going to get camped on a place known as King's Mountain. Patriot militia, who had come all the way from Virginia, mind you. They had come all the way down. These are the Over Mountain boys. They're going to surround Ferguson's loyalist militia at King's Mountain, wipe him out. Ferguson's killed, and actually there will be some atrocities committed there by the Patriot militia where they will actually hang, I think it's about 9 of the loyalist militia without basically the kangaroo court. They call it a court-martial. It's basically a kangaroo court. They hang them by gallows. So that wing was gone. The next thing came in January of 1781, when Daniel Morgan, who had been sent down from the Continental Army to take charge of the situation, have like a regular army presence for the Americans, he finds a way to use the militia finally. The Patriot militia was good independently in small ambush settings, but the Continental Army really could not make the militia integrate with them. Just didn't work ever. They broke and ran so quickly that they were useless in most battles. But he figured out, wait, why don't we just use their weakness to our advantage? So what he's going to do, he's going to lure Tarleton to attack him. And he lays a line of militia, thin line of militia, in basically a clearing surrounded by woods, which was known locally as the cow pens, because the tall grass was used to graze upon. And then what's going to happen is, soon as Tarleton advances out with his legion, which, mind, the legion was made up of loyalists as well. You know, there were also some people from Europe, but a lot of it was American loyalists that were now in the regular British military under Tarleton's command. And what's going to happen next? American militia gives way. Tarleton, he has been through this before. A few months back at the Battle of Waxhaws, he had been fighting American militia, and so I think he had some Continental troops there as well. And what ended up happening was he overwhelmed them. There was a miscommunication over the American flag of truce. The British Legion just charged right into the American militiamen and slaughtered several of them before a ceasefire could be called to. And this became known as Tarleton's quarters, which basically meant that Tarleton, there was a myth going around that he was calling no quarter on the Americans. Well, that's going to come back to haunt him, because the second line of militia, there's a second line. Oh, okay, it's a second line. We'll break for them, no problem. Tarleton is now super ambitious. He's like, all right, I've gone for 2 lines of militia. They're routing. I'm going to start trying to take them. Then he sees a third line by the tree line. It's not militia. It's part of the Continental Army. And those militiamen that had broken away and fainted, they hadn't run away. They had redeployed in the tree line and were now on Tarleton's flanks. At this moment, Tarleton and his British Legion were completely boxed in, taking fire from their front, from their left, and from their right. And a retreat is going to have to occur. Melee ensues on the battlefield. There's actually a point where Tarleton and an American cavalryman, A Lee, not the Lee, A Lee, I forget his full name. They're actually going to have a brief sword duel, which is pretty awesome in itself. There's an actual saber duel happening during this battle. Play whatever Star Wars music you want over there. But ultimately, Tarleton, he's going to quit the field with his survivors, and it is a massive American victory. At this point, Cornwallis is furious. And actually, you do see a little bit about this they don't really what you see in the movie. They basically make it seem like, oh, there was this one little band of Patriot militia causing Tarleton's life a living nightmare, which is true to an extent, but it was a much wider picture. It wasn't just Tarleton going into the backcountry. You had Ferguson, you had Tarleton, and you had Cornwallis all trying to fan out, but divide and conquer. And what's going to end up happening is Daniel Morgan retires. He's too tired of the military. So Nathaniel Greene takes charge, one of the most underrated Continental generals, by the way. And what Greene's going to do next, he is going to take Cornwallis on a goose chase for the backcountry of North Carolina, all the way up to the Dan River, basically up by Virginia. He gets across the Dan River, gets the Continental Army resupplied, that comes back into North Carolina and eggs Cornwallis into a final battle. While this was not the decisive battle that Greene had hoped for, it does pretty severely maul up Cornwallis's army. He basically replicates the cowpen strategy, but instead of using 1,000 Americans against 1,000 British, we're looking at like 13,000 Americans versus almost 20,000 British soldiers. So it's on a much larger scale. Due to this larger scale, there was a larger margin for error. Americans caused some friendly fire incidents. They were forced to quit the field, actually. But the plan did do the job of mauling Cornwallis so badly that after the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, even though the Americans had quit the field, Cornwallis could not pursue them again. Because he's like, I ain't going on another wild goose chase. I'm going to Yorktown again resupplied. So he headed over to Yorktown, and I think you know what comes next. But that's a story for another day. So you don't get to see any of that in the movie. What you get to see is Benjamin Martin in the backcountry raiding Tavington. We get some fun character moments, like the whole where Martin stuffs the scarecrows and fools Cornwallis into letting go the captured militiamen. And that's a fun. There's fun in that scene, and then we ultimately end up leading to Heath Ledger's character being killed by Tarleton, and then eventually it leads to the big final battle. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and now the Continental Army is here. Chris Cooper's here, and it's. And then and that's supposed to be Guilford Courthouse. Essentially, that's supposed to be Guilford Courthouse. They don't say it directly, I don't think, in the movie. But yeah, I feel that's something else that just really frustrates me about the Patriot. There is this fascinating story. The Southern Campaign, the American Revolution, is to me the most interesting military operation conducted during the entire American Revolution from 1780 for 1781. It's the year 1780 is the year that America almost died, but was also saved. And I also include 1781 for Cowpens and Guilford Courthouse. But we don't get that dynamic. We don't get that sprawling dynamic. What we get is, the Continental Army's now here. It took you long enough to show up. Oh, us militia, we're gonna do all the easy. We know everything. Well, you need both. You needed the Continental officers down there to really listen out to the Patriot militia, see where their strengths and their weaknesses were, and how they could apply in a regular army situation. And Daniel Morgan figured out a solution to it, and Nathaniel Greene capitalized upon it. And it ultimately led to the British surrender at Yorktown in October of 1781. We're indebted to men like Morgan and Greene and all of the people that were involved in those battles at Kings Mountain, Cowpens, and Guilford Courthouse for our country surviving to see its independence at the end of the American Revolution. That's the story I want to see adapted. This is thankfully set in South Carolina, an overlooked aspect of the American Revolution. Everybody talks about the fighting in New York and Boston, Massachusetts, and the Delaware River crossing, and it's always focused on Washington. That's not where it was won. This is where the revolution was won in South Carolina, but instead of getting that sprawling epic, we got World War II church burnings and, slavery basically non-existent, in South Carolina in the 1780s. And we just got Benjamin Martin, defying all the odds, one-man army, which is not going to deny. I love the ambush scene. It's complete horseshit, but it's fun. It's fun. It is very fun. And I also want to straight to you guys. The British military were capable of holding out against an ambush. Not saying that it always worked, not saying that they didn't quit the field, but more often than not, the British regulars, they're drilled, they're conditioned, especially your regulars that are being drawn from the American colonies, your light infantry. The reason they march in column down a roadway, the whole idea is that if there is a moment where they hear a gunshot, they're supposed to front to their left and their right, facing out on the either end of the road to receive anything that's about to attack them. They're ready for it. Again, not saying that they're always going to be able to hold their ground. I mean, obviously you can, I always say you can defeat any enemy hypothetically, but this idea that, they're easy targets in the wilderness and the militiamen just were so much better if their rifles. The rifle is accurate, but man, is it far more longer to load. If you're skilled with a rifle, absolutely. But in terms of a regular military setting, which is where the British were trying to fight the Continental Army in. They didn't want to go out in the woods normally. It didn't end too well for them. They wanted to fight the Continental Army in battlefields, literal fields. You know why? Because that's where they can outmaneuver the Continental Army. But of course, then you had the reverse, but you get my point. The myth of the Minutemen, guys, myth of the Minutemen. Yes, they have their moments. I'm not saying they're not an important aspect, but the militia are not a haggard, motley crew of people who don't have any discipline like people make it out to be. The Minutemen that were at Lexington and Concord to start the American Revolution, these guys were trained, they were drilled, they were training day after day, waiting for that moment for the shot to be heard around the world. They've been waiting for months for it to happen, to be quite honest. Even their clothing, though they were in some sort of civilian dress, it was very well kept. It was very well clean. It wasn't rough and hue like yours truly over here. I'm a little bit rough and hue because I was out in the sun all day today. We were doing Civil War historical interpretation for 4th of July today, portraying a Pennsylvania volunteer infantry unit. So my face is a little bit burned and I'm a little bit tired. So that's why I'm a little disheveled. And actually, in fact, the hunting frock, which I'm wearing, you always see a lot of these hunting frocks with, usually tan hide, and then you have these giant long frizzings. They wouldn't necessarily have that, obviously not that. The long frizzing, that's an embellishment just made for fashion. But hunting frocks were worn by the Continental regulars, especially when you're in the mid-war period where supplies are really bad. There are Continental regiments dressed in this, and there absolutely are militiamen documented wearing this. So that's a jab back at some historians who will go, "Oh, the hunting frock, it's such a Farby attire." No, it's actually not. As long as you research your unit properly, there's evidence, yes, this is being worn by militia and regular soldiers for the United States of America during the Revolution. It just depends on what regiment and what unit and what year and what time period you're trying to portray. I'm rambling, ain't I, guys? America, home field advantage. I think the Patriots. I think the Patriot's strength was in telling a rousing superhero story rooted in the human journey. A historical epic would have been a very different film. That's true. I'm more just saying at the end of the day, I'm projecting on poor Mel Gibson on what I want, not what I got. They're two very different things. It's a fun superhero film. It's just at the end of the day, there's just certain things. There's many little things in this movie that just are red flags, and it just makes me go insane. And it's just me personally. At the end of the day, I still enjoy the fun and dumb action sequences in this movie. I've already said that the soundtrack is awesome by John Williams. Has John Williams done about the soundtrack? What do you guys think in the chat? So there's just things in this movie that it's a fantasy of the American Revolution, and it brings everybody together in the United States of America, and it's a good romping time for people to go, yeah, America! But both sides do horrible things during the American Revolution, as any side would do during any conflict. And the American Revolution was one of the longest conflicts our first war is also one of our longest wars. We fight it almost for a decade, 1775 through 1783. We're fighting that for basically 8 years when it's all said and done. That was massive, long, and at the end of it, everybody was basically fried and at their wits' end. And it's truly a miracle what came out of it at the end of it. An entire new country that didn't completely implode on itself in 5 years, as normally happens when civil wars lead to a new government being formed. So, like the American Civil War. Yeah, that Confederacy lasted, a whole 5 years? Yeah. Doesn't normally work out. So it's truly a miracle that the United States survived. Last Mohegans is amazing. It's a French and Indian War film. It's one of the few French and Indian War films that come out in the past 30 years. And it is the best French and Indian War film. You will hear nothing but praise from me about that movie. Yes. All right. I think I've ranted enough about the Patriot, have I not? Like what you like, I will not like what I do not like. That made no sense. All right. That's my rant on the Patriot. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Everybody's going to roast me in the comment section below and tell me how I'm completely wrong. And that is fair. I just can't. I can enjoy it in pieces. I just can't bring myself to say that this is a good movie. I can't say, yes, I can as a historian recommend this. It's a guilty pleasure. I can't, Mel. I can't recommend you. I have fun. I have fun when you wipe out the British convoy, but no, it's not how that worked. All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up tonight because I gotta get back to, actually, I'm gonna try to get a little bit more editing done for the next Retracing History. I'm hoping to have it done this week. I'm hoping it's big. It's gonna be an hour long. That's not, and I've cut a lot out. There's almost enough there to make a director's cut. So the title is more to be symbolic. The Mohegan tribe was not wiped out, as the title makes people think. Yeah, no, Wilkinson as Cornwallis is pretty good. I won't deny. I can't comment. I've not researched Cornwallis the man enough. I know rough details about him to really say if it's an accurate personal depiction, but it is pretty. It's nice. It's a nice portrayal. It's harmless. It's not as insulting as some other things. Again, that's why I think they had to change Tarleton to Tavington, because they were like, oh God, we're about to just let's just make our own thing up so nobody gets mad. But I know where you're getting these sources from. I know what your inspiration is, so you can't escape Redoubt Productions. You will never escape me. I will find out where your inspiration came from for your historical fiction piece, because where there's smoke, there is fire. That's my personal opinion on it. All right. So, yep, I got to get back to editing next episode of Retracing History. Hopefully it's out by Saturday. If there's a reason it's not, I greatly apologize. It will then be out next week. I'm actually going on vacation for the rest of the weekend to enjoy the holiday with some friends. So looking forward to that. If you've not done so already and this is your first time tuning in and you enjoyed the stream, well, welcome. Be sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe here to Redoubt Productions to be the first notified when we go live, usually Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and when our next videos come out. We usually explore historic sites, sometimes on location, sometimes for alternate means. We focus on all sorts of aspects of American history, French and Indian War, American Revolution, American Civil War. I'm going to try to branch out to do some more different time periods. I'm looking to do Whiskey Rebellion this summer. The Whiskey Rebellion being the first major crisis the country suffered during being under the U.S. Constitution, when us Western Pennsylvanians refused to obey our attacks on whiskey. And yeah, it's a big brouhaha that people make out to be a full-fledged fighting. It really wasn't. There were shots fired. We'll talk about that. So I'm looking forward to working on that this summer. There will be some retracing histories about the Whiskey Rebellion coming out. And we'll get in detail about the certain events and people that were involved. And with that being said, I'm going to finish with this. Wilkinson was great as Ben Franklin and John Adams. Absolutely. Well, folks, with that being said, we are going to hit the music. We're going to wind down. I'm going to try to get the remains of my pieces of my brains. But before we head off, you know what I'm going to play? Why not?
Oh, man. Don't hit me with them negative waves so early in the morning.
Because I know all of you are probably just saying that to me. Like, oh, stop with the negative waves, read out. Just shut up. Just repeat to yourself, it's just a show. You should really just relax. Whiskey Rebellion! Woo! All right, folks. Have a good night, everybody.
Boys will really once again shouting a battle cry of freedom. We will really from the hillside walk together from the plain, shouting a battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors, up with the stars. We will reel around the flag, boys will really once again shouting a battle cry of freedom.